Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming out to RHA's Fright Night. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Maya Allen, and I'm one of the co-pros or the co-program coordinators for the Residence Hall Association. So tonight's event is going to be super fun. We have some spooky stories lined up for you. And we, kept in mind to keep all of these age appropriate because we are welcoming people from the community. So if you are from the community, a special thank you for coming out. We really appreciate all of your support. And without further ado, I'm going to kick it off to Kim, who is the Vice President of the Second Salem Paranormal Investigative Team. And she's going to talk a little bit about her org, and then we're going to get into the spooky stories.
Hi everyone, I'm Kim. I'm from the local org Second Salem Paranormal Investigation Team. We're the local ghost investigation group on campus. And kind of like the name suggests, we do a lot of investigation on a lot of the local legends of the Whitewater area, such as the Water Tower, Morris Pratt, Mary Wharf, and a bunch of others. All right, and our first story I have for you today is about the Witch Tower. It's better known as the Water Tower, right in Starin Park. As you can see, it's this big old thing right here. Now, it got the nickname Witch Tower because legend has it that witches used to dance around the tower, perform rituals there, do all kinds of things. So that's how it got its name. And because of that, that's also been kind of put in with all the other like witchy activity within the town. And if you go on spirit tours on any other year, you should be able to hear a story from the groundskeeper about one of his experiences at the tower, which is less of an spooky experience, but less paranormal, but more spooky in and of itself as what happened to him. Okay, so it starts off with a student who was on a substance. I know this is gonna go places, and they somehow found an old trailer called The Witches of Whitewater. This was a movie going to be a movie made in the early 2000s about some of the, local legends in the community. Of course, this movie was never made because the trailer was shown to the council. The town council said, no, thank you. So it remains as a trailer that you can find on YouTube. It's just really, really hard to find. So the student finds the trailer somehow, and they start watching it on repeat, to the point where they get extremely paranoid and think there are witches in the water tower, and I have to save everybody. So they take a knife for, defense purposes, and they go to the water tower. Now, if you've ever been there in person, it's built like a brick, essentially. And somehow they climbed up to about, I believe, this window, which is now boarded up, and got into the rafters. And of course, they're not quite on their A game. So they end up falling from the rafters to the floor, and they panic and start, running around, stabbing things, which sets off one of the alarms in the tower. So a groundskeeper is sent over. They open the door, and the student comes out and tries to attack them. Thankfully, this person, the groundskeeper, is very built, so they easily take the student down and subdue him while the police come to take them into custody. But that's just, and of course the landscaper is completely fine, but that's just how potent a lot of these stories can be, that they just kind of spread into the public mind and can get people revved up.
All right, everybody. So that was our first ghost story on the Witch Tower, which I'm sure many of you have seen if you've ever gone through Starin Park or just drove past it. So we have Abby to tell our next ghost story.
Hi, everybody. My name is Abby Daniels, and I'm the Publicity and Recognition Director of RHA. I'm going to be telling you a little bit about the Morris Pratt Institute Academy. Taking a step back, it seems that most of Whitewater's haunting started with Morris Pratt. Morris Pratt was born in New York, moved to Wisconsin in 1840. He built a successful farm and eventually became a really active spiritualist in spiritualist circles. He became a huge believer and practicer of spiritualism. This eventually led him to see a medium, those who have connections and can speak to the dead, in the 1880s. He also met with Mary Hayes Chenoweth, who normally used her skills to provide psychic healing, but she also gave financial advice. When Morris Pratt went to speak with her, she was under the control of a longtime German professor and advised Pratt to purchase and invest in land in northern Wisconsin. The land he invested in, based off of this advice, ended up being a place with some of the richest iron ore in the state, and Pratt grew to be very wealthy. This only caused Pratt to believe in spiritualism. He wanted to find a way to use his newfound wealthiness to enlighten others. Therefore, in 1888, Morris Pratt built the most expensive house in Whitewater. This house was designed to be a school for spiritualism in order to communicate with benign spirits. Many believe that spirits are the key to gain insight and knowledge on the world. This institute was a very large building for its time, with 2 large auditoriums designed to lecture on spirits. Although the institute operated with normal subjects such as language, science, and mathematics, there was much more than that. Courses specifically on practicing spiritualism consisted of psychic research, mediumship, and the science of seances, among other things. Although Pratt passed away in 1902, the institute carried on. What kind of spirits were they trying to contact? Since then, the Morris Pratt Institute has been moved to Milwaukee, but it is believed that the institute was the origin of a lot of the spirits of Whitewater, drawing them in by practicing spiritualism. Would Whitewater still be as haunted as it is today without the Morris Pratt Institute?
All right, everybody. So that's a little bit of a lot of the origin, or the believed origin. A lot of people believe a lot of it came from the Morris Pratt Institute. And before we move on to our next story, I just want to show some of the comments that people left when it related to the Witch Tower, because I thought that it kind of added to it. So someone said that they heard freshman year that if you go close to the tower, you can get in, but not out. I thought that was really interesting and kind of creepy. And then someone said, whoa, that picture kind of scared me. For real, for real. I completely agree. So just, to take a little bit of a break from the spookiness, I thought I'd share those comments. So now we're going to go to Rachel with our next spooky story.
One night, decades ago, a group of sorority sisters stumbled upon something that would change them forever. It was 1981, and a group of sorority sisters were hanging out in Wells Hall, catching up and talking about some upcoming events, when all of a sudden, they heard strange noises coming from the basement. At first, they didn't think too much of it, assuming that maybe there was maintenance work being done, and they continued gossiping and laughing. These noises continued to happen and got louder and louder the more they tried to ignore it. As the night went on, the girls became more and more worried about what the noises were. some girls teasing the others for being frightened. Finally, one of the sisters suggested that they go down to the basement, just to see what was going on. At first, she was met with a unanimous no from the others. After convincing them that it couldn't be anything crazy, and that there must be a logical explanation to the strange noise, the rest decided that there couldn't be any harm in simply taking a look. As the group of girls descended from the stairs into the basement, the noises seemed to get louder and more intense. At first, it seemed as if there was nothing out of the ordinary, and the girls even laughed at how ridiculous they had been to be afraid. Right when they were about to head back to the main level, one of the girls pointed out that bricks had been removed from the floor. She quickly motioned for the others to come and take a look. When they all finally made it over, they were shocked to discover that the bricks had been removed to reveal a hidden tunnel. They all huddled around the tunnel, asking what this was and where it led. No one had any answers. One girl pointed out that the strange noises had ceased, which only made them more freaked out. They were all loudly talking over one another, and when the noise came back, even louder. "It was coming from the tunnel, and it's getting louder," one of the girls loudly whispered. The noise seemed to be getting closer and closer to the girls. They decided that they needed to get out of there now, and they all run as fast as they could up the stairs. Once they reached the main level, they were all out of breath and discussed how weird that was. The next day, during the daytime, a few of the girls decided to go back down to the basement to check out the tunnel. But when they went into the basement, there was no trace of that tunnel, the noises, or the bricks that had been moved. Afterwards, they decided to look into the origins of the tunnel, thinking that they may have all just imagined it. What they have discovered was much worse than they thought. Apparently, there are tunnels under Wells Hall that are a part of an underground system. It is said that these tunnels are used by witches to move throughout town without being spotted by passing mortals. Have you ever heard any noises coming from the basement of Wells? If so, you have been hearing the witches of Whitewater roaming throughout the town.
Okay, I'm sure anyone that lives in Wells Hall might be a little freaked out right now. And it seems like there's some people who are chatting in the comments about potential ghost stories that they have had. So I'm going to encourage everyone, if you've experienced something weird, whether it be in your residence hall, your dorm building, or just around town, tell us the stories in the comments. Just because we're telling stories right now, it would be really interesting to hear some personal stories that people have witnessed. So without further ado, I'm going to put Kim back up for our next story.
All right. This time we have Mary Worth, one of the most popular legends from the Whitewater area. And because of her popularity, there's a lot of different versions of her stories. But the one we usually tell at meetings is about Mary Worth, the local witch. So, she's a local witch. Nobody likes her. She doesn't like the other people in the town, begrudgingly. So one day, she kind of goes up to, the town hall and goes, "Hey, I want to be buried in the cemetery like everybody else." And of course, everybody in the town gives her, "We're not burying you on hollow ground. That's crazy." So Mary goes, "Bury me in the cemetery or I will curse this town." Of course they go, "No, you're not going to do that." They wave her away. So, of course, she curses the town. Some businesses start to go under once she passes, and everyone's like, I guess we kind of got to go through. So legend has it that they buried her in a mausoleum, which is this big building above the ground, because technically she is buried on a graveyard, but she isn't buried in the graveyard. So it's a compromise. Of course, one of the favorite things people like to do is that they like to look for Mary's grave. Of course, because Mary is a super common name. That's looking for a needle in the haystack, really. But a lot of people do believe that she is buried in the Oak Grove Cemetery, and that at night you might just be able to see her silhouette of her spirit walking through the tombstones. And speaking of the Oak Grove Cemetery, that leads to the Whitewater Triangle, which, if you've ever heard of the Bermuda Triangle, it's like the same concept, because we have the cemetery on campus, Oak Grove, and then Hillside, which makes triangle. And inside here, you'll find a lot of the notable haunted places or places related to hauntings in Whitewater, such as the Pratt Institute, the Hamilton House. I don't know what the Lutheran Church is doing here, but probably that too. And you can also see that Starin Park's right here, and part of where I'm going to assume Wells is. I'm not good at street names or directions, but this is the general area where the Witch Tower and the Wells buildings are. And legend has it that a lot of the paranormal activity, like a lot of the stuff with the tunnels and the ghosts, all kind of happen within this triangle. So if you ever want to know why something doesn't seem quite right, you might want to check if you live in the triangle.
All right, that one kind of freaked me out a little bit, the triangle. But I think we're going to take a quick intermission from the stories we had prepared tonight and kind of delve into some of the comments, because I was reading through them and they're really interesting. So first, Jenna said that she 100% knows Nylons is haunted from experience, and regarding the Wells Tower story, she's waiting for her Wells experience. Someone asked, Wells sus? Let's see. I live in Wells West on the 9th floor, and that was probably the best ghost story I've ever heard. And I used to live in a haunted farmhouse. So guys, I'm telling you, Whitewater must have quite the reputation. The spookiest building for me is Clem. Last year, I stayed in Nylons, and my roommate and I went to bed. We said goodnight to our RA across the hall and went to bed. I randomly woke up 2 hours later, and my door was wide open. I know I locked it, which was strange. My roommate was still sleeping, so I know it wasn't her. Then I heard a knock, but didn't see anything. Spooky. If you guys have any stories like that, keep putting them in the chat, because I think that they're really interesting. So moving on, we're going to go back to Rachel with another story.
I am sure that we have all driven past the Hamilton House Bed and Breakfast, the old Victorian house found on Main Street. Just by the look of things, it's pretty clear that this old house would come with its fair share of creaks and groans. The stories of this house date back all the way to the 1800s, when the Van Giesen/Posey family purchased the home. Van Giesen's daughter, Sarah Posey, taught art lessons out of the home for extra money and as a hobby. Sarah painted some of the hand-painted tiles that can be found in the grand staircase of the home, as well as 2 tiles that can be found in the fireplace. These tiles feature the faces of Sarah Posey and her young son, and can still be found there to this day. Sarah and her son were very unhappy, but Sarah's husband, Oliver Posey, was money hungry and wanted to get rich fast. The family eventually sold the Hamilton house, moved to California, and were never seen in Whitewater alive ever again. Throughout the 1900s, the house suffered under new owners, falling apart and requiring many repairs. Walls and flooring needed to be redone, and mysteriously, the tile of little boy Posey's portrait had been gone missing from the fireplace. No one knows where this tile has gone. Every resident of the house reported seeing a woman in her nightgown in the East Gardens. Who was this woman? Where did she come from? When the house became a fraternity in the 1960s and 70s, students frequently saw a little boy at the foot of their beds in the middle of the night. They described him as an annoying kid who acted like a little brother who needed attention. His favorite room was his mother's at the top of the stairs. One man was so disturbed by little boy Posey's constant presence that he never stepped foot in the Hamilton house again. Even after the house was no longer a fraternity, there were still strange disturbances reported. Under new owners, the back hallway of the house was turned into a doll museum. The museum owners constantly found dolls moved around, placed on chairs, and on the floor in the middle of the hallway. They guessed it was little boy Posey trying to get their attention. Once the house finally underwent renovations, the missing tile of the son's face was suddenly found out in the East Garden, where Sarah always stood. It was returned to the facing of the fireplace, and both ghosts were never seen again. Current owners reached out to the distant relatives of the Poseys and discovered that both Sarah and her son lived long lives. After their deaths, when they returned to Whitewater, they were buried in Hillside Cemetery. It is believed that they returned to the place in which life was happiest before they were taken away to California.
All right, everyone, that one, I don't know why, that one is the scariest to me, just because so many people have seen their ghosts throughout that house. We have a lot more stories that are coming in to the comments, so I'm going to go ahead and read those really quickly. Let's see, Clem and Benson are definitely haunted. I lived in Nylons last year too, and my door randomly slammed and opened. It seems like a lot of people are having this experience. Alex shared that my room in Lee was the most haunted I have been in. Items went missing in front of my roommate, and I would reappear in drawers we did not open. Our doors would also open after being locked. In Fricker, I have experienced similar things. I hear a lot more knocks on my window and have things fall over in my Fricker room, though. So it seems like they have had a lot of different experiences in different dorm buildings. When I was an RA in Wells, I would have nights where my residents and I used to sit by our doors in Wells and try and catch the mysterious runner, but there was never a person to match the running sounds. One time I was getting ready to lay down, and I swear I kept seeing a dark figure sitting in the corner above my bed. I didn't sleep properly for 2 nights. A lot of spooky stories, you guys. So I am going to have Kim come back and talk. A lot of people are questioning if the 6-pack is haunted, and she has a little bit to share on that.
I'm really happy to notice some of you are questioning whether the 6-pack is haunted. And although it isn't, in the triangle or anything, our org has gotten a lot of experiences from the 6-pack as well. There's the legend of the little girl in Lee who has been seen running around the halls. A woman in white, and I believe Clem, or one of the other dorms, who kind of walks around during the night. But really, it varies with each and every person and what they experience. Moving on from that, though.
Okay, so to answer some of your questions on the 6-pack as well as running noises, a lot of people have the common trend of running noises being a thing that kind of scared you in your halls. So I think that answered some of the other questions. And then it looks like if I'm taking a look at the comments again, from RHA, it said, one time it was late at night and there was a shadow I could see through the crack in my door. I thought I heard a knock and I went to quickly open up the door and nobody was there. And then Chloe can relate to the running sounds, always checking, but no one is ever there. So it seems like a lot of people are experiencing the same thing. I personally can't speak on anything that I have directly experienced. I don't know if it's just I didn't know what I was looking for. Let's see. I think someone agrees with me. Too used to minding my own business to notice a ghost. When I hear weird noises, I just put my headphones on. I can completely agree with that. This comment kind of just made me laugh at the woman in white walking around the six-pack. Be like, so seems like a lot of people have the same experiences. I am going to go back to Kim. I'm not 100% sure if she has another story or not, but she can at least end it off with a little bit about just this the organization that she's a part of. So I'm going to give it back to her.
I do have a few more stories. Whitewater never ceases to amaze. So the one I have up right now is The Cursed Book. I'm not sure how many people have or have not heard of it because it's kind of infamous, but it's kind of more along with alumni. Because if you go to the archives in Anderson, they'll say a lot of alumni will come and ask for the book. But basically, there's this giant, and I mean like giant, book down in Anderson. At first, back when there was like just a basement area, not really a library, it was kept inside a cage. And usually when there's a cage, it's for like one of two reasons, to keep something in or to keep things out. So of course, there's this big, creepy looking book in a cage. People are gonna talk. And of course, legend has it that if you touch it, you will die. Of course, you can see in this picture our org's old president who is touching the book. And I promise the book is not the reason she's no longer with us. Although there are some org members who swear that after they've touched the book that they have gotten super sick, like really sick. And like I can actually vouch for this. Because last spring semester, before everybody was like kicked out, or maybe fall, some point last year, when we got to see the book, this is when you could still touch it, because as you can see, it's falling apart from old age. I touched it, and then a few weeks later, I got like super sick to the point where I had to down NyQuil for 3 nights in a row because I could not sleep on my own without some sort of medication. We've also had another member who attributed touching the book to the passing away of one of their family members. So there's a lot of weird things about the book. And then we have the Beast of Bray Road. It's not really a Whitewater kind of legend, it's a Walworth County one. But I figured it was still a story worth telling, just because it's our own little popular cryptid in the neck of the woods. And he has his own little history, where basically reports began back in 1936 of a 7-foot-tall wolf-like creature walking on 2 legs in the woods near a rural road outside Elkhorn, Wisconsin. Obviously, this would be Bright Road. An increase of reportings did happen in the 1980s and 90s. So one of the local newspapers, the Walworth County Week, assigned a reporter to it. And, at first she was skeptical. She's like, a wolf man? Like, that doesn't sound real. But after investigating and, interviewing a lot of witnesses, she began to believe it. And after, the reports started to dwindle down and she retired, she did actually publish a book, which helped lead to the beast's popularity. It even had its own movie back in the early 2000s, I think 05. You can probably find it on the internet if you really look for it. So that's its one claim to fame. But reports are actually still coming in for the beast. There was one that actually occurred this year in summer. This was from a Lake Geneva resident who was on the clock, where they're a trucker. They deliver fertilizer down through Bray Road. And this is in broad daylight, so there's enough light to know what you're seeing. They look to the side where the forest is, right over there. And they see this 7-foot tall creature go to the side of the road, stop, pick something up, or just seem to pick something up, and go back into the woods. And this creature did the same thing twice. So for both sightings, which is pretty interesting. There are probably tons more sightings that haven't been labeled yet, but it's very exciting to see them still happening today. And in conclusion, it's just something about Whitewater that makes it so haunted. Don't know if it's the atmosphere or the history or just the kind of people that move here. Something about it just keeps up this paranormal atmosphere that we all kind of love, because let's face it, this is one of the few college towns, I think, that is really famous for their ghost stories or witch stories. And that's one of the things that makes the university and the town unique.
All right, Kim, I had a few comments come in about questions on the cursed bookstore that I was wondering if you could shed some light on. So a couple people asked what was the book about or what was in the book, if you know.
Oh yeah, of course, gladly. I don't know if you could tell from the pictures that I had up, but if you got if you're Catholic, from a very Catholic family, you'll kind of see that these are kind of the Alleluia right here, hymns, and that this bears a really, on the front of the book, bears a striking resemblance to the Bleeding Heart of Christ, which is, again, a very Catholic symbol. So, in short, it's a big, old, heavy Catholic hymnal that somebody put in a cage because they didn't want people touching it.
All right, another question that was asked is what is, or not what is on the book, sorry. I think the question was, where is the book now?
It's in the Anderson Library in, what's the word, archives. There we go. It's in the archive section. So if you sign up for a session, you can see the book. But of course, as you can see through the pictures that were taken, these were taken a few years ago. The book it's very old, and it's very much falling apart. In fact, the last time like our org went to see it, we couldn't really touch it anymore because the librarians were afraid that it was gonna, fall apart from its own weight and from it being old. And no, you can not check out the book because it's in the archives. So you can, like, if you want to look at an archived book, you technically can, but it has to be in the presence of a librarian. And with each individual book itself varies because they do have the original manuscripts from the Morris Pratt Institute, which I unfortunately do not have pictures on hand right now, but you can freely touch those and other stuff. And then there's other things like the Poisoned Widow case file that you can't touch just because of their historical importance.
All right, hopefully that answers everyone's questions about the cursed book. I have a couple people who are commenting, are there more ghost stories? Can we find more? So I figured I would let you answer that just because that's kind of what your org is all about.
Yeah, there are always more ghost stories to find. In fact, even, jogging my memory for a lot of these cases, I did find some new stories and new information, such as in the early 90s, an individual saw what they believed were a group of witches by a lakefront in the Whitewater area. And from the water, they swore they saw something, kind of rising out of it. So, of course they booked it, like any smart person, because they weren't staying around for that. And there's a lot of individual experiences people have, so don't be afraid to ask around.
So it seems like a lot of people are really interested in these ghost stories. Kim, do you want to just mention when your org meets? If they're curious about it, maybe they want to hear more and get more involved.
Of course, our club meets in Highland at 6 to 7 p.m. on Thursdays. I believe in Highland room 1-5-35-25. It's the room right behind the Starbucks barista place in Highland. So just that classroom right behind it. We meet, every Thursday. This week we'll be out of the building for it, but next week we will be meeting for spooky sleepover games. So we'll be going over those and playing some that the members are comfortable with. And of course, you're invited to wear pajamas or anything comfy.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Kim, for telling when you guys meet. I'm just gonna put, if you have any more questions, this is their email. I'm sure Kim would be happy to, go through any questions you guys have, or if you're curious or didn't quite catch when their meetings are. I just wanted to go ahead and put their email up. So I'm going to go ahead. It looks like we have a few more ghost stories coming in through the comments. So we can go through those really quickly. So someone said, I'm not sure if it's because I'm an RA or not, but I always hear knocking noises and running noises outside my door and check and no one is there. Sometimes when I'm in the hallway, I'll hear the sound of a door opening/closing somewhere at a really steady beat. I'll do that for as long as I'm in the hallway. And then on the 3rd floor of Erie, I remember hearing pounding from above. I went to the 4th floor, could not find the source of it. And when I looked in the hall, sound seemed farther and away from the room. I heard that anyone who reads or touches the book, the curse book that we had talked about before, mysteriously dies or falls extremely ill shortly afterwards. And then let's see. A few people had mentioned in the comments that they remember seeing the Beast of Bray Road, which is really creepy. I think, unless any of you guys have more stories to share in the comments, those are the stories that we had lined up. Oh, it looks like I just got someone commenting. One year at my old haunted farmhouse in Neenah, Wisconsin, my dad told me that he had seen someone walk into the bathroom, but no lights came on and no one ever came out. We all stayed in bed. So I just want to thank everyone so much who came out tonight and listened to these ghost stories. Hopefully they weren't too creepy. But like I said before, thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day. Just want to thank everyone for coming and for also just sharing your experiences in the comments. It was really interesting to read everybody's stories and their own experiences. I think it really added to the ghost stories. And on behalf of our PRD, I'm just going to put our Instagram. I know a lot of you are coming from our Facebook and YouTube accounts. So if you want to follow us on Instagram, we're at UWRHA. I just want to thank everybody once again for coming out. We really appreciate it. So have a good rest of your night, everyone. I hope you can all sleep tonight. Thanks, everyone.